Hello everyone! I've counted the votes, and the card you want me to talk about most is Cairne Bloodhoof.
Take heart, young one. The Earth Mother is near.
Let's begin, shall we? The first time that we see Cairne pop up in the story is during Warcraft 3. Young Warchief Thrall, he's liberated his people from their internment camps and has been told by the Prophet Medivh to rally the Horde and lead his people to their new destiny, lead them across the sea to the distant lands of Kalimdor. They had to unite against the coming darkness, the Burning Legion, and along the way they met up with the Darkspear Trolls and the Tauren. Not much is actually known about Cairne's youth. We know that he was friends with a Mulrune totem, his life mate was called Tamala, but she already died at this point, and together they had a son called Bane. In his hands is the legendary Bloodhoof runespear, which was the pride of the Bloodhoof tribe and has been passed down by tribe chieftains to their heirs for generations. As was tradition, every chieftain carved their story in runes into the shafts. Now Thrall explains to Cairne that he's looking for his destiny, and the old bull thinks that the Oracle to the north might be able to help. The orcs, they just saw an army of horsemen, the centaur, marching to the north in the direction of Cairne's village. Together, they kept the Tauren safe, they escorted the caravan, and the debt of the Tauren to the orcs that can only be repaid with blood, so Cairne shows up again later to help them reach the Oracle. Once they do, they're told that they must unite with the survivors of Lordaeron led by Jaina Proudmoore if they hope to stand a chance against the Legion. This was not an easy thing, considering the history between the humans and the orcs, but the fate of the world was at stake here, so they teamed up, they saved Grom Hellscream, and they even united with the elves to kick command of their planets. With the Legion repelled, Thrall went back to build the city of Orgrimmar, while Jaina decided to build Fedamore nearby to keep the peace that they got going, to keep that peace strong. Not everyone was so open-minded about orcs though, and it was her father, Dalen Proudmoore, that showed up to show his daughter how it's done. He planned to strike out at the orcs, to which Rexxar, he rallied the Horde forces in Thrall's name, including the Tauren.
I am Cairne, but I can be of help to no one. Return to your war chief and tell him that I am dead, just as my heart is dead.
Cairne at the time was dealing with his own problems. His son Bane was taken captive by the Centaur, and they don't keep prisoners for long. Perhaps if Rexxar was able to find some clue as to his son's fate, perhaps that might rouse their chieftain from his stupor. And Rexxar did one better. He actually found Bane himself, and he brought him back safe and sound. With his son returned, Cairne was more than ready to stand with the Horde once again. And Jaina, she did not agree with her father's actions, so she stood by and did nothing, while Rexxar, Cairne and the forces, they moved into the city and they took her father out. The shaky peace between Fedamore and Orgrimmar that remained, while Cairne, with the orcs' help, he was able to drive back the Centaur and claim the grasslands of Mulgore for their own. For the first time in hundreds of years, the Tauren had a land to call their own. Upon the windswept mesa of Bluff, Cairne built a refuge for his people, where Tauren of every single tribe were welcome. Over time, the scattered tribes united under Cairne's rule. Now some disagreed about the direction that the new nation should take, especially people like Megafor Grimtotem, since she believed that she should rule their people. Most of them agreed though that Cairne was the wisest and best suited to lead their people towards the future. For a time, the former nomadic Tauren, they'd found a good place within the Horde, but the world of Azeroth will soon enough change with the coming of the Cataclysm. This did not come without a warning. The world was in turmoil, and Thrall, he made plans to travel to Outland to figure out what exactly was going on. Seeing how the people loved Garrosh Hellscream, he decided to make him the war chief, something that Cairne thought was a very bad idea. He told Thrall, do not give Garrosh power, and do not turn your back on your people, and give them only this arrogant blusterer to guide them. That is my wisdom, Thrall. Wisdom of many years, wisdom bought with blood and suffering and battle. This was the last thing that Thrall wanted to happen, but he had made his decision and he left Garrosh in charge. The Twilight's Hammer cult, they staged an attack on a peaceful meeting between Night Elf and Tauren druids, and word of this reached Cairne. It was orcs who had attacked the meeting, orcs which they believe were sent up by Garrosh, but the war chief had nothing to do with it. Nonetheless, the leader of the Tauren and the war chief of the Horde, they ended up in Makora, a duel to the death.
Garrosh, you are not fit to rule the Horde.
A duel that Cairne very well could have won, was it not for Megafor Grimtotem. She saw the opportunity to remove Cairne and replace him as leader, as she offered to bless Gorehal, as was tradition. Instead of simply blessing the weapon, she poisoned it, which Garrosh knew nothing about, and one flesh wound did the rest. Cairne blinked. His vision was blurring. Had he gotten dust or sweat or blood in his eyes? He took a precious second to wipe the back of his hand across his eyes, but it aided nothing. His hand shook as he lowered it, and his legs, they felt weak. Stunned, he stared at Garrosh. The orc was sweating and breathing hard. As Cairne watched, Garrosh gripped the axe and met Cairne's gaze evenly. Cairne clutched his own weapon. It weaved in his hands. It felt so strangely heavy. And then he knew exactly what had happened to him. And so, I, who have lived my whole life with honor, die betrayed. He could not even cry out with his last breath to accuse his murderer. It was through an act of sheer will that he was able to even hold on to the shattered spear so that he would not be struck down unarmed. Garrosh's eyes narrowed as he beheld the furrow he had carved in Cairne's chest and the pieces of the rune spear lying on the earth. For a moment, surprise flitted across his feature, and then he set his jaw in determination. He began running toward his opponent, lifting Gorhal in both hands and bringing it down. Unable to deflect the blow or even move out of his path, his life fading with every heartbeat, Cairne Bloodhoof, High Chieftain of the Tauren, mutely watched it descend. Megatha was foolish enough to believe that Garrosh would support her after this, but of course he didn't like being used like that, and he left her to her fate. Cairne's son Bane, he was warned about the coming Grimtone attack, he found aid within Faramore, and he took his city back, and then banished Megatha and all those that stood with her out of their lands. Thrall returned from his journey to Outland after learning very much to say goodbye to his old friend, the heart of the Horde, the one that he had parted with in anger. The former warchief had a difficult choice to make, since returning to the role of warchief, kicking Garrosh out of the mantle, that seemed the logical thing to do, but the world itself needed him as a shaman right now, so Garrosh remained on as warchief. Cairne's legacy, that would live on through his son Bane, who sought guidance from his father, as after the events of Mispadaria, he was chosen to defend Garrosh in his trial. They performed the ritual, the spirit of his father showed up, and Bane asked him how he could possibly defend the murderer of his father. How could he possibly defend someone like Garrosh? His father said, "Answer this, and you will know what to do. If it grieves you that I was slain by treachery, can you then do anything but to strive for perfect truth and integrity, even, perhaps especially, when it does not come easily? Can you not do your utmost to honor this role that's been given to you? Dear son of my blood and my heart, I believe you knew the answer before you ever came." Their time was way too short. To walk between worlds is difficult, and despite all the things Bane still wanted to say, his father was gone and the son knew what he had to do, had always known. He would strive to honor his father's memory, lead their people as best as he can, and do his best during the trial.
The eyes of the Earth Mother are upon us.
That is where we end the story of Cairne Bloodhoof. Now you know how he died, so don't put this guy in a warrior deck. It's pretty insensitive. As always, I'll leave it up to you guys who goes to decide what card we're going to talk about next, so leave your suggestions in the comments down below, and who knows, your card might be used in the next video. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time guys, see ya!